In 1998, a teenage girl uploaded footage of herself speaking to a Bigfoot in what sounded like an actual language. The internet destroyed her, called it the worst hoax they'd ever seen, and she vanished completely. 26 years later, wildlife cameras captured something in that exact same valley that forced linguists, researchers, and even skeptics to admit they were wrong about her. But here's what keeps me up at night. If she really was raised by them for 8 years, what did she learn about what they actually are? And does that change whether we should even be looking for them? Hey guys, I'm Mr. Hark. Today I need to show you something that's been eating at me for months. Back in 1998, before YouTube even existed, a video showed up on an old internet forum. It was grainy camcorder footage, the kind your parents probably used to record birthday parties. But this wasn't a birthday party. This was a teenage girl, maybe 15 or 16 years old, sitting in what looked like a crude shelter made of branches and moss. Her hair was wild and tangled. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She was speaking to someone just off camera. But here's the thing that made people lose their minds. The sounds coming out of her mouth weren't English. They weren't Spanish or French or any language anyone recognized. They were deep, guttural noises, rough sounds that came from somewhere low in her throat. Wood knocks, grunts, something that sounded almost like words but wrong, like hearing a voice underwater. And then, from beyond the camera's view, something answered her back. The video was only 42 seconds long. In that time, you could see her smile. You could see her reach her hand out toward whatever was making those sounds. The camera shook. You caught a glimpse of something massive and dark moving between the trees. Then the footage cut to black. The person who uploaded it wrote only one sentence. "This is Emma Carter. She's been missing since 1987. She's alive." Within hours, the internet exploded. People ripped the video apart frame by frame. They said the sounds were fake, probably made with audio software. They said the girl was an actress. They said the whole thing was staged by someone looking for attention or trying to sell a story to the tabloids. Forums filled with people calling it the worst Bigfoot hoax they'd ever seen. And that's saying something because the internet has never been short on bad Bigfoot videos. Some people tried to defend it. They pointed out that Emma Carter was a real missing child. The case was real. Her family had been looking for her for 11 years. The photos matched, but that just made people angrier. They said it was disgusting to use a real tragedy to push a fake story. They said whoever made the video should be ashamed. Within a week, the mockery got so bad that the original poster deleted everything. The video vanished from the forum. The account disappeared. And so did any trace of the girl in the footage. People tried to find her. A few investigators looked into it. But Emma Carter, if that's who it really was gone again. The video became one of those internet legends. The kind of thing people mentioned in late-night conversations or brought up as an abomination of how gullible people used to be before everyone got smart about fakes in CGI. For 26 years, that's where the story ended. I first saw a copy of that video about 5 years ago. Someone had saved it before it got deleted, and it had been passed around in private collections ever since. I watched it probably 100 times. I'm not going to lie to you. My first instinct was the same as everyone else's. It looked too convenient, too perfectly framed despite being shaky. The sounds were too clear for old camcorder audio. But something about it stuck with me. The way the girl moved, the way she looked at whatever was off camera. There was no fear in her eyes. There was recognition. There was something that looked an awful lot like love. That's not something you can fake easily, especially not in 1998 when people were still figuring out how to edit video on home computers. Then last month, everything changed. I got an email from someone claiming to be Emma Carter. At first, I thought it was a joke. I get emails like that all the time. People pretending to be witnesses or experiencers or whatever. But this one was different. She included details that weren't in any public record. She knew things about that video that only the person who filmed it would know. She said she was ready to talk. She said new evidence had come out that proved she'd been telling the truth all along, and she couldn't stay silent anymore. We set up a call, then a video meeting. The woman on my screen was 43 years old. She had kids of her own now, a normal job, a normal life. But when she started talking, I felt the hair on my arms stand up. Her voice had this quality to it, this roughness underneath, like someone who'd learned to speak human language as a second tongue. She told me about wildlife cameras. Scientists had placed them in a valley in the Cascade Range of Oregon, trying to track elk populations. In early 2024, one of those cameras caught something else. Three figures moving through the trees at dawn, large, covered in hair, walking upright. The footage was clear, clearer than almost anything that's ever been captured. But here's what made Emma reach out to me. In the background of that wildlife footage, you could hear sounds. Wood knocks in a specific pattern. Three slow, then two fast, then three slow again. Emma said that was the family pattern, the way Maura and her juveniles used to call to each other across distances. The same pattern she'd used in her 1998 video when she was trying to call them back. She still had the original tape. She'd kept it hidden in a storage unit for over 2 decades, too scared to ever share it again after what happened the first time. But now, with this new footage backing up her story, she was willing to let researchers look at it, willing to let linguistic experts analyze the sounds, willing to finally tell the whole truth about what happened to her. I asked her the question that I know you're all thinking about right now. If you really lived with them, if you really were raised by Bigfoot for 8 years, what are they? What did you learn that the rest of us don't know? She got quiet, looked away from the camera. When she looked back, there were tears in her eyes. She said that's exactly what she needs to explain. But first, we need to go back to 1987. Back to when she was just 6 years old and her whole world disappeared into the trees. My name is Emma Carter, and I was 6 years old when I disappeared. My parents had taken me camping in the Cascade Mountains in Oregon. It was supposed to be a fun weekend. My dad wanted to teach me how to fish. My mom packed sandwiches and juice boxes. I remember being excited about sleeping in a tent. We set up camp near a creek, the kind with water so cold it made your teeth hurt if you drank it. The trees were huge, taller than any building I'd ever seen. Everything smelled like pine and wet earth. On the second day, I saw a rabbit. It was brown with white on its tail, and it hopped just a few feet from our campsite. I wanted to follow it. I thought I could get close enough to touch it. My parents were busy setting up the cooking area. I didn't tell them I was going. I just walked after that rabbit into the trees. The forest swallowed me faster than I could have imagined. One second, I could still hear my dad's voice calling about where the matches were. The next second, there was only silence and trees. I tried to go back, I really did. But every direction looked the same. Brown trunks, green branches, rocks covered in moss. I started crying. I yelled for my mom, for my dad. Nobody answered. I walked until my legs hurt, until the light started changing and the shadows got longer. I was so scared I couldn't breathe right. My chest felt tight. I sat down against a tree and pulled my knees up to my chest. I remember thinking that I was going to die out here and nobody would ever find me. That's when I heard the footsteps, heavy ones, not like a deer or a dog. Something big moving through the brush. I thought it was a bear. I'd seen pictures of bears in books. I knew they could hurt you. I tried to make myself smaller, pressing back against the tree trunk. Then she stepped out from behind a huge cedar. She was taller than my dad, taller than anyone I'd ever seen. Her body was covered in dark brown hair, thick like a shaggy carpet. Her face was flat, not like a monkey, more like a person's face, but wider and with a heavy brow. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black. She looked at me for a long time. I was too scared to move, too scared to even scream. She made a low sound, almost like humming. Then she reached out one massive hand, palm up, just like my mom used to do when she wanted me to hold her hand crossing the street. I don't know why I took it. Maybe because I was 6 and I was lost, and she didn't seem angry. Her hand was warm. The hair on it was coarse but soft underneath. She held my hand gently, like she knew I was fragile. Then she started walking, and I walked with her. We went deeper into the forest, up hills and around fallen logs. My legs were tired, but every time I stumbled, she stopped and waited. When it got dark, she brought me to a place I would come to know as home. It was a small valley hidden between 2 ridges with a stream running through the middle. There was a rock overhang, like a shallow cave, with ferns growing all around the entrance. Inside, I could see shapes moving. Two smaller figures, still huge compared to me, but not as tall as her. Juveniles. I would learn later they were her children. She made a series of sounds, deep grunts and knocks. The juveniles came closer, curious. One of them reached out and touched my hair. I flinched. She, the one I would later call Mora, made a sharp sound and the juvenile backed off. That first night, I slept curled up against her side. Her body was warm, warmer than any blanket. She smelled like earth and cedar, and something else, something woad I couldn't name. I cried myself to sleep. When I woke up, there was food next to me. Berries I didn't recognize. Roots that had been cleaned in the stream. I was so hungry I ate them. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. I stopped counting after a while. Mora taught me how to survive. She showed me which plants were safe to eat and which ones would make me sick. She taught me how to catch fish with my hands in the shallow parts of the stream. The juveniles, I started calling them brother and sister in my head, were like clumsy puppies. They played rough, wrestling and chasing each other. Sometimes they tried to include me. I learned quickly that I was much more fragile than they were. Mora watched over all of us. She was patient with me in a way that felt almost human. When I struggled to crack open nuts, she would do it for me. When I got cold at night, she would pull me closer. But there was also danger. A male, bigger than Mora, with scars across his chest and a mean look in his eyes, came to the valley one day. He made aggressive sounds, loud barks and roars. He pointed at me and made it clear he didn't want me there. Mora stood between us. She was smaller than him, but she didn't back down. They had a confrontation that lasted hours. Sounds I'd never heard before, complex and angry. Finally, he left, but he came back several times over the years. Each time, Mora protected me. Each time, brother and sister would pull me to the back of the shelter and keep me quiet. I learned their language slowly. It wasn't like English with words that meant specific things. It was a pattern. Wood knocks meant danger. Low humming meant contentment. Sharp barks that meant move now. Different rhythms meant different things. 3 slow knocks meant family, meant us. 2 fast knocks meant stranger, meant be careful. I learned to respond, to knock back, to make the sounds in my throat that they understood. My human words faded. I stopped saying mom and dad. I stopped thinking in English sentences. I became something in between. Not human, not Bigfoot, something else. Winter was the hardest. The cold cut through everything. We huddled together in the shelter, all 5 of us sharing body heat. Mora would line the floor with cedar branches. The smell was sharp and clean. Brother and sister's hair grew thicker. Mine didn't. I shivered constantly until Mora started wrapping me in woven grass mats she made. At night, pressed against her side, feeling her chest rise and fall, I felt safe. The forest was my home. These creatures were my family. I forgot almost completely that I had never been anything else. I was 14 when everything changed. 8 years had passed since that first day when Mora found me. I had become part of the valley, part of the family. I knew every tree, every rock, every place where the best berries grew. My hair hung down past my waist, tangled and wild. My clothes from that camping trip had fallen apart years ago. I wore woven grass and animal hides that Mora had made for me. My feet were tough and calloused. I could climb trees and catch fish and read the forest like a book. I barely remembered what it felt like to be human. Then one morning I heard voices, real human voices speaking English. The sound hit me like cold water. Brother heard them first. He made the warning knock. 2 fast taps. We all froze. Mora's body went rigid. Through the trees, I could see them. 3 people in bright jackets, carrying backpacks. Hikers. They were laughing and talking about something I couldn't follow. My brain stuttered. The words were familiar but foreign at the same time, like a song I used to know but had forgotten. One of them was a woman with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked so clean, so human. Something deep inside me lurched. A memory of my mother brushing my hair, of sitting at a table eating cereal from a bowl, of a bed with sheets and a stuffed animal I used to sleep with. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe. I don't want you missing out on tomorrow's new Bigfoot story. Thanks for watching. The hikers didn't see us. They walked past, their voices fading into the forest, but something had broken open inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay against Mora's side like always, but my mind was racing. Questions I hadn't asked in years came flooding back. Where were my real parents? Did they think I was dead? Was there a world out there beyond the trees where I used to belong? Mora must have sensed something. She made soft humming sounds, trying to comfort me. But it didn't work this time. Over the next few weeks, I started wandering closer to the edges of the valley, places we normally didn't go. I found a trail one day, a real hiking trail with markers. I followed it for a while, my heart pounding. I could hear cars in the distance, actual cars on a road. The sound terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. When I got back to the shelter, Mora was waiting. She looked at me for a long time. Then she made a decision. I could see it in her eyes. The next morning, she took my hand just like she had 8 years before. But this time, we walked in a different direction, toward the sounds of civilization. We walked for hours. Brother and sister followed at a distance, confused. When we got close enough that I could see buildings through the trees, Mora stopped. There was a ranger station ahead, a small brown building with a truck parked outside. She looked at me. Then she made a sound I'd never heard from her before. It was low and sham, almost like crying. She touched my face with one massive hand. Her palm was rough and warm. Then she turned and walked back into the forest. Brother and sister followed. I stood there watching them disappear. I wanted to run after them. I wanted to stay with the only family I remembered. But my legs wouldn't move. Something pulled me toward that building, toward other humans. The ranger found me standing at the edge of the parking lot. I must have looked like something from a nightmare. Wild hair, strange clothes, bare feet covered in mud. He approached me slowly like I was an animal that might run. He asked my name. I opened my mouth and human words came out. They felt wrong in my throat, rough and clumsy. Emma, I said, Emma Carter. His face went pale. He knew that name. Everyone in the area knew that name. The little girl who vanished 8 years ago. The massive search that found nothing. The case that went cold. He brought me inside, wrapped me in a blanket, called someone on the radio. Within an hour, there were police cars and social workers and people asking me 1,000 questions I couldn't answer properly. They put me in foster care. There was no reuniting with my parents. My dad had died in a car accident 3 years after I went missing. My mom had remarried and moved to another state. She came to see me once. We sat across from each other in a small room with a social worker watching. She cried. I didn't know what to do. She was a stranger. I felt nothing. They decided it was better if I stayed in the system, better for everyone. I was placed with a family in a town 30 miles from the forest. They were nice enough. They gave me a room with a real bed. They bought me new clothes. They enrolled me in school. But I was failing at being human. The therapist didn't believe me. When I told them about Mora, about brother and sister, about living in the valley, they nodded and wrote things down in their notebooks. They said trauma could make you believe things that weren't real. They said I'd probably been held by a survivalist or a cult member who kept me isolated. They said my mind had created the Bigfoot family as a way to cope. The kids at school were worse. They heard the rumors. The weird girl who claimed she was raised by monsters. They called me Bigfoot girl. They howled at me in the hallways. I stopped talking. I sat in classes staring out windows at the trees, wishing I could walk back into them and disappear. 3 years passed like that. By 1998, I was 17 and barely holding on. I'd been moved to a group home. I had no friends, no hope. Then one day I borrowed a camcorder from another kid in the home. I told him I wanted to film nature stuff. That weekend, I hiked back. I knew the way even after all that time. When I reached the valley, everything looked smaller than I remembered, but still familiar. I stood at the edge and did the family knock. 3 slow, 2 fast, 3 slow. I waited. Nothing. I did it again, louder this time, using a rock against a tree trunk. The sound echoed through the valley. Then I saw movement. Brother stepped out from the trees. He was massive now, fully grown, with scars on his arms from fights or accidents. But I knew him. I knew the way he tilted his head. I started making the sounds we used to make, the guttural language I hadn't spoken in 3 years. He answered back. His voice was deeper now, but the patterns were the same. I was crying and laughing and the camera was shaking in my hands, but I kept filming. He came closer, reached into the undergrowth and pulled out something woven from grass, brown and falling apart. My childhood blanket, the one Maura had made for me. He'd kept it, all this time. I uploaded the video to a forum when I got back. I thought finally someone would believe me. Finally I'd have proof that I wasn't crazy, that it all really happened. Instead, the internet tore me apart. Every comment was worse than the last. Fake, hoax, pathetic. Someone tracked the upload location. A week later, I heard gunshots in the forest. Hunters had gone looking for my family. I deleted everything. I disappeared. I changed my name. I buried that part of my life so deep I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. For 26 years, Emma Carter lived a normal life. She got her GED, she went to community college, she worked ordinary jobs, cashier at a grocery store, receptionist at a dental office. She met a man who was kind to her. They got married. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. She lived in a small house with a backyard and a dog. She packed lunches and went to parent-teacher conferences and did all the things regular people do. She never told anyone about the valley. Not her husband, not her kids, not her closest friends. She kept that part of herself locked away like a secret room nobody else could enter. She told herself it was over. That chapter was closed. She would live the rest of her life as just another person who'd had a strange childhood and moved on. Then in March of 2024, her phone rang. It was a scientist from a university in Oregon. He was studying elk migration patterns in the Cascade Mountains. His team had set up wildlife cameras throughout the forest, motion-activated cameras that snap photos when something moves past them. One of those cameras had captured something they couldn't explain. He tracked down Emma through old missing person reports, through forum posts that people had archived even after she deleted them. He wanted to know if she'd be willing to look at the footage. She almost said no, almost hung up. But something made her stay on the line. He sent her the video file. She watched it alone in her bedroom with the door locked. The timestamp said it was filmed at dawn. The camera was positioned near a stream. For the first few seconds, there was nothing but trees and water. Then they appeared. 3 figures moving through the frame from left to right, walking upright, covered in hair. The largest one was in front, moving slowly. Its hair was darker on the body but lighter around the face and shoulders, almost gray in the early morning light. Behind it came 2 others, slightly smaller, moving with more energy. They weren't running, they were just walking. But the way they moved was unmistakably intelligent, purposeful. About halfway through the clip, the lead figure stopped. It turned its head toward something off camera. Then it raised one arm and knocked against a tree trunk. 3 slow knocks, a pause, 2 fast knocks, another pause, 3 slow knocks. The other 2 answered with the same pattern. Then they disappeared into the trees. Emma watched it 17 times in a row. The gray hair. The way the lead figure moved with a slight limp on the left side. Maura had injured her leg years ago, caught it in a fall. The family pattern in the knocks. The 2 juveniles, now fully grown, still following behind. It was them. After all these years, still alive, still in the valley. She couldn't breathe right. Her hands were shaking. That night, she called the scientist back. She told him she needed to think. She needed time. But she also told him something else. She still had the original tape from 1998, the full version. Not the 42 seconds that had been uploaded. The whole thing was almost 6 minutes long. She'd kept it in a storage unit across town, a small 5x5 space she rented under a fake name. Inside was a cardboard box with the camcorder, the tape still inside it, and a notebook where she'd written down everything she could remember about the language. The wood knock patterns, the sounds, what they meant. She'd been 17 when she wrote it, trying desperately to hold on to something that was slipping away. She brought it home, set up an old TV and VCR player she bought at a thrift store. watched the full video for the first time in over 2 decades. There she was, younger, wild-looking, speaking to brother in that guttural language. You could hear her voice clearly. You could hear him responding, the rhythm and pattern of it, the way they went back and forth like a real conversation. The scientists sent the audio to a linguistics expert at another university, a woman who specialized in studying language structure. She analyzed it for 3 weeks. When she called Emma Bum, her voice was shaking with excitement. What she'd found wasn't random sounds. It wasn't just animal noises. The vocalizations had patterns, repeated sequences that appeared in different contexts with slight variations. There were rules, grammar, syntax. The would knocks functioned like punctuation or emphasis. It was primitive compared to human language. But it was language, structured communication with meaning. She said this was the most significant discovery in cryptozoology history. She said Emma needed to publish this, to share it with the world, to show everyone that she'd been right all along. Emma said no. The scientist called back. He said they needed to document this properly, to set up cameras throughout the valley, to study the family group, to finally prove that Bigfoot was real. He said this was bigger than her, bigger than any one person. This was about science, about understanding a species we thought was impossible. Emma asked him if he knew where the valley was. He said not exactly. The camera coordinates gave them a general area, but it was vast, dozens of square miles of dense forest. It would take years to narrow it down, unless someone who knew the exact location could show them. He asked if she remembered, if she could take them there. She does remember every trail, every landmark, every turn. She has maps in her head more detailed than anything a GPS could provide. She knows exactly where Maura and brother and sister are living, where they sleep, where they hunt, where they feel safe, and that's exactly why she won't tell. She explained it to me when we talked. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. Maura found her when she was lost and dying. Maura could have left her, could have let nature take its course. Instead, she brought Emma home, fed her, taught her, protected her from the male who wanted her gone, raised her like she was one of her own children for 8 years. And the very first time Emma brought humans back into their world, into their valley, hunters came with guns. She heard the shots. She heard men shouting about tracking the creatures down, about finally getting proof, about what a body would be worth. She said if she reveals the location now, the same thing will happen. Maybe worse. The valley will be swarmed within days, researchers sure, but also trophy hunters, thrill seekers, people who see dollar signs, people who see fame. Even if the scientists have good intentions, even if they promise to be careful, the secret won't hold. Someone will leak it. Someone always does. And then Maura and her family will spend the rest of their lives running or hiding or fighting off humans who want to own them, study them, or mount their heads on walls. She won't do that to them. She can't. Some debts can't be repaid, but they can be honored. Her way of honoring what Maura gave her is to keep the valley's location buried, to let them live in peace, to protect them the way they once protected her. I'm looking at both videos now, the 1998 footage and the 2024 wildlife camera, side by side on my screen. The wood knock patterns are identical. 3 slow, 2 fast, 3 slow. The family signal, 26 years apart, and it's still the same. The proof exists. The evidence is documented. Linguistic analysis confirms structure and meaning in their communication. Wildlife cameras show them still living in that hidden valley. Emma Carter was telling the truth all along. But here's the question I keep coming back to, the one that matters more than any proof or evidence. If we finally found them, if we knew exactly where they were, what would we do? Would we protect them? Would we leave them alone? Or would we do what humans always do when we find something rare and wild? Maybe the real question isn't whether Bigfoot is real. Maybe it's whether we deserve to find them at all.